I wore a $14 jacket to my son-in-law's company meeting that morning. Not because I had to, because I wanted to see who would notice. Let me back up a little. My name is Bernard Calloway. I'm 63 years old. For the past 4 years, I've been living in a two-bedroom rental in Knoxville, Tennessee, driving a 2009 Ford F-150 with a cracked dashboard and a side mirror held on with electrical tape. My neighbors know me as the retired guy who walks his dog at 6 in the morning and leaves a paper copy of the Knoxville News-Sentinel on his front step until noon because he's already read it by 5:30. I shop at Aldi. I use coupons. I order water when I go out to eat, which isn't often. My daughter knows all of this. She's seen it. She visits twice a year, usually around the holidays, and she sits in my living room and looks around at the second-hand furniture and the old television and the bookshelves made from planks and cinder blocks. And she smiles the kind of smile that is mostly pity with a little embarrassment around the edges. Her husband, my son-in-law, stopped pretending to hide it years ago. His name is Derek. Wait, I need to be careful here. Names matter to me now in a way they didn't used to. Let me call him what my daughter calls him in that soft, admiring voice she uses when she introduces him at parties. She calls him a self-made man. I'll call him what he is to me, my son-in-law. That's enough. He built a mid-sized logistics company in Charlotte, North Carolina. Not from nothing, his father left him a warehouse and 2 box trucks and a $200,000 line of credit. But he did grow it. I'll give him that. He grew it into something with 40 employees and contracts, with 3 regional grocery chains, and a fleet of 12 refrigerated trucks. He puts that number in conversation a lot. 12 trucks, 40 employees, like they're proof of something. My daughter met him at a conference when she was 28. She was working in marketing then. She'd always been sharp. My daughter, quick with numbers, good with people, the kind of person who could walk into a room and immediately understand what everyone in it needed. I was proud of her before she met him. I'm still proud of her. I just don't always recognize the version of her I see now. They got married 4 years ago. I sat in the front row at the wedding and watched her walk down the aisle, and I thought, this is it. This is the part where everything gets easier. It didn't quite go that way. My son-in-law made his opinion of me clear in small ways at first. The kind of thing you can explain away if you want to. He'd talk over me at dinner. He'd ask my daughter questions about family history as if I wasn't sitting right there with 63 years of answers. He once, and this one stuck with me, he once referred to me, in my presence, as your dad's situation, like I was a problem to be managed rather than a person to be spoken to. My daughter touched his arm when he said it. She didn't correct him. I didn't say anything either. That's important to understand. I've never been a loud man. I grew up in eastern Tennessee, third of 4 kids. Father worked the railroad. Mother cleaned houses until her knees gave out. You learn early that the people who talk the most usually know the least, and the people who know the most rarely need to say so. I carried that with me. Sometimes too far, maybe. But it's mine. The friction came to a head last spring. My son-in-law's company was going through a significant expansion. He'd secured a new contract, distribution for a regional pharmacy chain, bigger than anything he'd done before, and he needed capital to scale up quickly. He'd been talking to a private equity group out of Nashville, and he'd also been quietly approaching family members. He called me in March. The call was pleasant, almost warm, which should have been my first clue. He told me about the contract, about the opportunity, about how this was the kind of moment that only comes along once. He said he was putting together a small group of investors, family and close friends, people he trusted, and he wanted to give me the chance to participate before he opened it to outside money. He needed $300,000. From me. I told him I'd think about it. That was apparently the wrong answer. Over the following 2 weeks, the calls shifted. My daughter started calling more frequently too, which she doesn't usually do, and the conversations always circled back to the same place. Did I have time to look over the materials he'd sent? Had I thought about what this could mean for the family? She said it in a way that implied family meant his company, and not the people in it. Then came the part that I want you to understand clearly, because it's the part that mattered most. My son-in-law scheduled what he called a family investment meeting. He does this, frames business conversations as family events, so the social pressure does the work his arguments can't. It was held at his office in Charlotte. Conference room on the 3rd floor, floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the skyline that he definitely paid someone to maximize. There were refreshments. There was a presentation prepared by someone on his team. There were 4 other people in the room: his mother, his older brother, a cousin, and a family friend who'd already committed to participating. I drove up from Knoxville. I wore khaki pants, a blue plaid shirt I'd bought at Target for $14, and my old brown belt with the brass buckle my wife gave me before she passed. I didn't dress up because I didn't think about it. I just wore what I wear. My son-in-law looked at me when I walked in and something shifted behind his eyes. Not mean, exactly. More like a recalibration. Like he'd already put me in a column somewhere and my appearance confirmed it. His mother leaned over to the cousin and said something I wasn't meant to hear. I heard it. She said, "Bless his heart." If you're not from the South, you might not know what that phrase means when it's delivered in a certain tone. It doesn't mean what it sounds like. It means, what a shame. It means, he doesn't know what he doesn't know. It means, look at him. I found a seat at the table. My daughter was already there. She smiled at me when I sat down. The same smile as always, the pity one with the embarrassment edging it. She reached over and touched my arm, which I think was meant to be reassuring but landed differently. My son-in-law stood at the front of the room and gave his presentation. He was good at it. Confident, polished, the right amount of humble sprinkled in when he talked about risk. He had charts. He had projected returns. He walked through the pharmacy contract, the scaling timeline, the expected EBITDA by year 3. He used the word EBITDA 3 times. I counted. Then he got to the part about investors. He went around the table. His mother, in for 50,000. His brother, in for 75. The cousin, 25. The family friend, 100,000. Everyone nodded at each other with the comfortable ease of people who've done this before, or who at least want to look like they have. Then he looked at me. "Dad," he said. He'd started calling me that maybe 6 months after the wedding, without asking. I never told him how I felt about it. "We'd love to have you involved at whatever level makes sense for you. Even a smaller commitment means a lot to the family. Even a smaller commitment." I looked at him for a moment. His brother was looking at me. His mother was looking at me. The cousin I'd met twice was looking at me. My daughter was looking at her hands. "What's the minimum?" I asked. He blinked. "Well, we've been thinking about 25,000 as a floor for this round, but we can be flexible." "I'll need to look at a few things first," I said. There was a pause, the kind of pause that has weight to it. His mother made a sound. Not quite a laugh. Something quieter than that. She picked up her coffee cup. My son-in-law recovered quickly. He nodded, said something about taking my time, moved on to the next part of the presentation. But I noticed what happened after. When the room broke into smaller conversations, he talked to his brother and his mother, and the family friend, and the cousin. He circled back to my daughter twice. He did not come back to me. My daughter found me by the window during the break. She looked like she was choosing her words carefully. "Dad," she said, "I know it's a lot. But this is a real opportunity. This is his life's work. And I want us to be a part of it. As a family." I asked her, "Do you know what I did before I retired?" She looked at me the way she's looked at me more often in recent years, like the question itself was the problem. "Of course I do, Dad. You worked for a shipping company." "I did," I said. "For 31 years. She waited for more. I didn't give it to her." "Are you going to be able to participate?" she asked. "Because if you need help understanding the documents, I can read documents," I said. "I've been reading documents for a long time." The meeting ended. I drove back to Knoxville. I walked my dog. I made a pot of coffee and sat at my kitchen table and looked at the materials my son-in-law had sent over. Then I made a phone call, not to a financial advisor, not to a lawyer. I called a man named George Tillman, who runs the private equity firm I co-founded in 1997 and sold a controlling interest in 11 years later. George and I still talk every few weeks. He's one of 7 people who know, in exact figures, what my exit from that firm was worth. I explained the situation. George listened. Then he said very calmly, "Bernard, do you want me to have someone look at his books?" "No," I said. "Not yet. I want to look at them myself. Here's the thing about my son-in-law's business. He's not dishonest. I want to say that clearly. He runs a legitimate operation. His numbers are mostly real. The pharmacy contract is real. The growth potential is probably real. But there were things in those documents that a man without experience wouldn't know to question. Things about the timing of revenue recognition. Things about how the debt structure was presented versus what it actually looked like when you moved the numbers around. Things about the lease agreements on 3 of his trucks that would affect cash flow in year 2 in a way that his presentation hadn't mentioned. I made notes. I looked up his competitors. I pulled public records on the pharmacy chain he'd contracted with. They were a regional operator, privately held, with one lawsuit in the past 4 years over a delayed distribution deal. Not alarming, but worth knowing. I spent 3 days on it, then I called my son-in-law. I told him I had some questions about the investment materials. He sounded surprised but gracious. He said, of course, whatever I needed. He offered to set up a call with his CFO. That's all right, I said. I just have a few things, won't take long. I went through my questions. The revenue recognition timing, the lease structure on the refrigerated units, a line in the projections where the overhead allocation didn't match the number 2 pages earlier. Small things, but the kind of small things that add up. There was a silence after each one that I recognized. It's the silence of someone recalibrating. Someone who expected a different kind of conversation. By the fourth question, he said, "Where are you getting this from?" "The documents you sent me," I said. "Right, but, do you have someone helping you with this?" "No," I said. Another silence. "Dad, I have to ask, what's your background exactly?" "Because my daughter said you worked in shipping." This is the moment I want to describe carefully, because it's the one I've thought about most since. I wasn't angry. I want to be clear about that. What I felt was something quieter than anger. Something that had been sitting at the bottom of a long patience, the way sediment sits at the bottom of water that's been still for a long time. When the water moves, it rises. "I worked in shipping," I said. 31 years. "Okay," he said slowly. "Before that, I spent 14 years building a private equity firm focused on mid-market logistics companies. Nothing. I co-founded it in 1997. We had offices in Knoxville, Atlanta, and Cincinnati. We managed about 800 million in assets under management at peak. I sold my controlling interest in 2012. I let that sit. The terms of the sale were structured so that a significant portion of the proceeds went into a blind trust, which is why they don't show up anywhere public. My daughter knows I have savings. She doesn't know the specifics because I've never felt it was relevant to our relationship." More silence. "I worked in shipping after because I like working. I like the paperwork. I like the rhythm of it. I drive an old truck because I've never cared about cars. I clip coupons because my mother clipped coupons, and it kept my family fed during some hard years, and I don't see any reason to stop." My son-in-law said very quietly, "How much are we talking about?" "Enough that your ask of me was not large," I said. "And enough that your presentation, while solid in many ways, has some structural issues I'd want addressed before I'd feel comfortable with any involvement." He didn't say anything. "I'm not saying no," I told him. "I'm saying I'd like to have a real conversation, if you're interested in that." 3 days later, he drove to Knoxville. He came alone. He didn't call first. He texted my daughter, who texted me, and I said, of course, "Come on by." He pulled up in his Audi, and I watched him from the window before I went to the door. He sat in the car for a full 2 minutes before he got out. We sat at my kitchen table. I made coffee. He looked around the apartment differently than he had before, the way people look at a room when they're trying to reconcile it with new information. He looked at the bookshelves, the old television, the plank and cinder block shelves. He looked at the stack of financial journals on the side table by the armchair. I'd always left those out. He'd never asked about them. We talked for 4 hours. I don't want to overstate what happened. It wasn't a reconciliation scene from a movie. There was no breakdown, no flood of apology, no moment where everything was forgiven and understood. That's not how things work between men of a certain age and a certain pride. What there was instead was something more honest than that. He told me he'd built his company trying to prove something. He didn't say it exactly that way. He said he'd always felt like he had to earn his place, even with his father's head start, because people assumed the head start was the whole story. I understood that, more than he knew. I told him the lease structure on his refrigerated units was going to create a cash flow gap in month 16 if the pharmacy contract had any payment delays, and I walked him through exactly why, and he listened in a way I hadn't seen him listen to anything before. Not because I had money. I want to believe it wasn't that. I want to believe it was because the information was useful and clearly given by someone who understood what they were talking about. Maybe some of both. We restructured 2 of the lease agreements over the following month. His CFO called me twice with follow-up questions, and both times we ended up talking for over an hour. I did not invest the $300,000 he'd originally asked for. I invested more than that, with terms we negotiated together, clearly written, fair to both sides. My daughter called me after she found out the full picture. Not just the investment, the full picture. The firm, the trust, the years of it. She was quiet for a long time on the phone. Then she said, "Why didn't you tell me? Would it have changed anything?" I asked. She thought about it, which I respected. "I don't know," she said. "Maybe not. But I think I don't know. I would have seen you differently." "I know," I said. "Is that why you didn't tell me?" I've thought about that question since. The honest answer is complicated. Part of it was that I never wanted my daughter to look at me and see a number. Her mother and I raised her in a house where we talked about work ethic and character, and the difference between what something is worth and what it costs, and I didn't want the number to become the thing she thought of when she thought of me. Part of it was simpler than that. I didn't think it was her business. Part of it, the part I sat with longest, is that I'd watched what money did to families my whole career. The ones who had it and knew about it and couldn't stop circling it, like a fire everyone says they want to step back from, but no one actually does. I didn't want that for my daughter. I didn't want the number in the room at every dinner. "I'm still the same person I was," I told her. "I know," she said. "I still shop at Aldi." She laughed. It was a real laugh, not the pity one. First time I'd heard it in a while. "I know you do," she said. "I found 4 boxes of their granola in your pantry. It's good granola," I said. "It really is," she said. She came down to Knoxville 2 weekends later, without her husband. We went to the farmer's market on Saturday morning and I made chili on Saturday night. And we watched an old film on the television that she complained about, and then got completely absorbed in, the way she always used to. She stayed through Sunday. She helped me fix the side mirror on the truck, which she was surprisingly good at. On Sunday evening, before she drove back to Charlotte, she stood in my kitchen doorway and looked at me for a moment. "Dad," she said. "Yeah. Thank you for not making it a thing." I looked up from where I was rinsing out the coffee mugs. "For not making what a thing?" "Being right," she said. "You were right about a lot of things. You could have, I don't know, made it bigger. You didn't." I didn't know exactly what to say to that. I turned off the water and dried my hands on the dish towel. "I wasn't trying to be right," I said. "I was just being myself." She nodded. She looked like she was going to say something else. She didn't. She picked up her bag and hugged me at the door, and I stood on the front step and watched her pull out of the parking lot. George Tillman called me the following Monday. He wanted to know how it had all turned out. I told him the short version. He laughed when I got to the part about the meeting, the conference room, the floor-to-ceiling windows. "Did they really not know?" he asked. "Nobody asked," I said. "That's the thing about people," George said. "They see what they expect to see." "Usually," I agreed. "And what about you? You feeling okay about all of it?" I thought about my daughter's laugh on the phone. I thought about my son-in-law sitting across the kitchen table from me, leaning forward over the lease documents like a man who'd finally decided to listen. I thought about the farmer's market, the chili, the old film, the side mirror on the truck shining now in the morning light. "Yeah," I said. "I'm good." I walked my dog after I hung up. 6 in the morning, same as always. The street was quiet. The paper boy, well, the delivery car, had already come and gone, and the Knoxville News Sentinel was on the front step where it always is. I picked it up on my way back in, made a pot of coffee, read the paper at the kitchen table, wore the same plaid shirt, didn't change a thing.